storytelling is a special class. One of the hardest things about storytelling class is tonight. So they can work on their stories and write them, but getting up and performing them for you live is a completely different animal. And so it takes a lot of vulnerability, and I'm super proud of these students. So let's give a hand to our first storyteller, Liam Adams.
I love Halloween. I always have. The costumes are awesome. The decorations are beautiful. But best of all, the candy is delicious. Seriously, Halloween candy is always so much better than anything you could buy from the store. When I was younger, I was always so excited for the end of October, because that meant Halloween, and more importantly, my share of the candy haul was right around the corner. I've had plenty of strange instances of things happening on Halloween, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to what happened when I was 8 years old. At the time, I was trick-or-treating with a few good friends of mine in a rather rich neighborhood. We knew that's where everyone gave the best candy. We were nearing the end of our candy run when we saw it, the last house on the street. I had trick-or-treated in that area for years, and every time I'd been there, that house was as dark and as quiet as you can imagine. But this year, it seemed I was finally blessed with the opportunity to meet the owners of such a mysterious house. I walked up to the house with my friends in tow. And to be honest, the lackluster decorations on that house should have been a dead giveaway that something was up. But me being the little sugar glutton I was, I paid no mind to the careless decorations. I'd rather dreamed of all the different types of candy I might be given. If I was really lucky, I might even get a king-size Hershey bar. The possibilities were endless. I was practically drooling when I knocked on the door. The door swung open, and our cries of "trick or treat" were met with silence, as a man who had clearly been doing this for way too long just stared back at us. His face was plastered with a frown, which seemed to get more and more prominent the longer we stood there. Well, that's creepy, but at least he has candy, I thought, as I reached for a bowl behind him. I reached into the bowl and grabbed something, which to my surprise was made of a hard plastic. Oh, what strange wrapping, I thought, as I looked down to see a small bottle in my hand. Of what? Hand lotion. Hand lotion? This man gave hand lotion to an 8-year-old on Halloween. The look I must have given this guy. I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? And it wasn't just me either. This guy gave hand lotion to my entire friend group too. I was dumbfounded. All we could do was sulk back down the driveway and try and make sense of what happened that Halloween night. Let's just say we never went back there ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Scarred for life, obviously. Our next storyteller is Claire. She's been waiting for this all day. She can't wait. Give it up for Claire.
Two years ago, one of my best friends moved away from Georgia. One of the only people that I really had a connection with moved to North Carolina. Her name was Elisa, and she was considerably older than me, but we were so close. And she moved to North Carolina to start her own farm, which had always been a dream of hers. She moved there, and I hadn't seen her for the last 2 years. And so I got the opportunity this summer to go see her, and I was so excited. I decided that I was going to go see her, and I was going to try to make her life as easy and relaxing as possible, as much as a 15-year-old could, on a giant farm. And so I went up there, and I went up with my dad and my sister, and as soon as we arrived, I was greeted by 9 herding dogs, barking and terrifying everyone in the car. And Elisa immediately rushed out, and she calmed them all down, and she introduced herself to my parents and all that goodness, and then she introduced her fiance, Chase. And I hadn't heard about him, I hadn't heard about any of this, so we spent the whole night catching up. And I was given all my chores and all of that, and I was told that I was in charge of the cows and the chickens while I was there. And this was a huge responsibility for me because I had never taken care of such a big thing. And so on the third day when I woke up, is when all the havoc started. I woke up and I went up to the kitchen and I went to go greet them for the day. And the first thing that went wrong was I hadn't charged my walkie-talkie, a vital thing on a farm. And so I left it and I went to go start my chores. And so I jumped in my John Deere and I rode about 30 minutes after the cow pastures so I could go change their pastures. And I got out there and I didn't see them. Had no idea where they were. So I drove around a little bit more. 30 minutes later, still couldn't find them. Thought maybe they're out in the woods. It's a pretty big place. Still could not find them. About 2 hours later, I realized they were gone. I was absolutely terrified, thinking, I came here to make this so much easier for Lisa, yet everything just went down the drain. So I decided to drive around for a few more hours. I eventually found them about 20 miles to the north in somebody else's land, somewhere that is not protected and nowhere near us. And I went to go try to herd them in. Maybe I could solve this on my own. I didn't know how to herd cows, and they do not listen to me. Learned that very quickly. I became a little bit stressed, thinking maybe this wasn't good. So I tried a little bit longer. After an hour, I realized, this isn't gonna work. Grabbed my walkie-talkie, thinking maybe I could call Chase so Lisa doesn't get stressed, because that's exactly the opposite of what I wanted to happen. I didn't have my walkie-talkie. I didn't charge it. Now I was absolutely terrified. I had about 50 cows running around, getting farther and farther away from the farm, and it was now midday. I knew that it was going to take a while to get these cows home, and I had absolutely no idea what to do because I couldn't make it home in time, get Chase or anyone else, because they were still moving farther away from the farm. And at this point, I was crying, and I was terrified and all that goodness. And then I realized the dogs are herding dogs. And I figured maybe I have a chance. Maybe they'll hear me 20 miles away. So I whistled, and I held my breath. And about a few minutes later, I heard them all barking and running towards me. And I let out a huge sigh of relief because all of that stress immediately went away, thinking they could help me. And as soon as they got there, it's like they knew what to do. They started herding the cattle, and they got them all back within 2 hours. We got back to the pasture, and it was absolutely amazing, and I got all my chores done. Granted, I could have gotten a lot more done, but that was a save in my book given the day. And we got back, and I got all the cows in, I gave the dogs extra bones because they were so amazing. And then that night, I went to go have dinner with Lisa and Chase, and I started telling them my day, and how my chores went and all of that. And I mentioned that the cats got loose. And then I elaborated. And I told them the whole story. By the end, I was wondering why Elisa was white and terrified. And she told me that if I had lost those cows, it would have been about $50,000 worth of cows I would have lost. Thank you.
Great job, Claire. Thank you. Our next storyteller is Ashley.
All right. Hi, I'm Ashley Burke. So back in the 8th grade for spring break, my family, friends, and I decided to go on a catamaran boat around the British Virgin Islands. Though the idea itself sounds pretty cool, it ended up being a bit of a mess due to the fact that I was celebrating my 14th birthday there, but for my birthday present, I got a sinus infection. On top of that, some of our tours got canceled due to rough waters, and most of the islands were still devastated by some hurricanes that hit the year before. So as we were deciding where to go, we decided on going to this island called Norman Island. This island I've been to before, and honestly, it's my favorite of these islands. It's beautiful, it has beautiful sand on the beaches, the water's crystal clear, and there are fish everywhere. On top of that, there are reefs all around the island, and there are some caves nearby that you can explore. So when we got over and we parked, we decided to go to the caves. And so we got in, we swam over, and right away, fish surrounded us, and it was gorgeous. Especially the yellow snappers, you could tell that they were used to people being there. So as we were swimming around, me and my friend and 2 of the other adults with us decided to go to the mouth of one of the caves. We went over, and there was a spot where we could sit up, so we stand, and we were looking around at the view. So what happened was the waves started picking up, And since the adults were trying to protect us from getting hit by the rocks in the back, like being thrown into them, they were like, hey, go underwater and swim out. So me and my friend were like, okay, that sounds good. And we go underwater and look to where we're swimming. There's a barracuda waiting for us in the swimming area, and it didn't look super nice. So anyways, my friend and I were sort of in shock at what we're seeing, and we look at each other underwater and scream and like try to go back further into the cave. The problem was the adults didn't see the barracuda, so they proceeded to push us into the fish. So they managed to push us at the same time that a wave was being pulled back. So at the speed we were going at this fish, there was no way we could really get out of its path. That wasn't until I saw something else come into view. My dad, who had been nearby, had seen the whole situation happen, and he decided that he wasn't about to let us get attacked by this fish. So he swam in between us and the fish, and we ended up crashing into him instead, and he sent us into 2 different directions going past. As I swam to safety, I looked back in time to see him pull out his underwater camera and take a picture of it. Classic Adam move. In this moment, it was really scary, and my life sort of flashed before my eyes, but it was reconfirmed in that moment that my dad will always be there for me. Thank you.
Great job. Great job. You guys are doing a great job tonight. The next storyteller is Reagan, and Reagan changed her story 3 days ago. Yeah. And you may be wondering, but over the course of the 6-week mod, the students wrote several stories, and so it was kind of difficult for them to pick the one they wanted to present, and they were going back and forth. A lot of them had a lot of trouble, but then one just came up with a brand new one right at the last minute, and it really turned out great. So welcome Reagan to the stage.
Hi, I'm Reagan. So I babysit for this family in my neighborhood, kind of a lot, and they have 3 kids, ages 2, 4, and 6, and they're all girls. And I'm normally over there a couple times a week, but last week I was over there most every day. And it was Wednesday at 5 p.m., and the mom was in a rush, and she dropped off the 2 and the 4-year-old and was like, just heat up whatever is in the fridge for dinner. I'm like, okay. So I strap the 2-year-old in a chair, and I get out some chicken tenders and mixed vegetables that are in a little package. I'm like, this looks great for them. So I'm putting the chicken tenders on their plates, and the 4-year-old walks up to me, and she goes, I'm allergic to chicken tenders. I'm like, you're allergic to chicken tenders? She's like, yes, I am. And I'm like, I don't think you are. And she's like, I am, but I'm only allergic to those kinds. And she points to the container. And I'm like, okay, so you'd rather eat vegetables for dinner? She's like, yes. And the vegetables in the container are green beans, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. 3 vegetables I would not eat at the age of 4, and I would barely eat now. And this 4-year-old is telling me she'd rather have that for dinner. So I'm like, fine, but you have to eat some chicken. So they finish eating dinner, and the dad brings the 6-year-old home, and they want to go play outside and go biking. And so we got into the garage, and I opened the garage, and the 6-year-old brings me this huge Ziploc bag. She's like, okay, there's some helmets and knee guards and elbow guards in there. Can you help us put them on? I'm like, sure. But the little 2-year-old is only going to be on the little scooter, so she only needs a helmet. So I'd put the helmet on her, and she would take off into the living room and hide behind the curtains. And she would laugh and laugh and laugh, and then I'd have to run over there, come pick her up, and grab her and bring her back into the garage. And this happened for about 30 minutes. And during this time, the girls would be screaming at me to come help them put on all of their gear. So finally, they're ready, and they grab their bikes, which are these little kiddie bikes without any pedals, and they grab the handlebars, and the wheels are off the ground, and they just take off down the cul-de-sac. And they're like having so much fun, and we're out there for about 20 minutes, and then we go in and put the 2-year-old to bed, and then come back out. And the girls decide that they want to play with the Elsa and Anna Jeep from Frozen. And so I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna start, because there was a bunch of like car seats and art materials in there. I'm like, I don't think it's gonna start. They're like, no, it will. So I'm like, okay, sure. So we take everything out and they're both sitting in it and the 6-year-old floors it and it goes nowhere. So they start to cry. They're getting really upset and I'm like, it's okay, why don't one of you get out? So the 4-year-old gets out and the 6-year-old is flooring it again and it goes. And that's enough for them. And so she starts shaking back and forth while flooring the Jeep and it's going, it's driving all around their driveway. And they're having so much fun. So I'm like, we need to go to bed. So I put them to bed and I start walking home and I'm just thinking about all the homework that I have to do, my math assignment that I ended up staying up late doing, and my chemistry assignment, and I'm thinking about how simple their life was and about how the worst thing that would happen to them that day is that they would have to eat chicken tenders for dinner, or it would take them too long to put on their helmets, or the Jeep wouldn't start up. And I'm thinking about if we had a time machine and if we could go back, we would go back to that time. Thank you.
And that is the first time Reagan has told her story without erupting into laughter at some point in the middle. That was really, really good. So this next storyteller started off the class by saying, I just don't have any stories. Nothing else has ever happened to me. And as the class went on, part of what we did was story mining, looking into their lives, trying to make lists, finding different things, and the stories just started to flow out of them. But this particular storyteller all of a sudden realized that he had about 1 million stories, and most of them were hilarious. Welcome Jackson to the stage.
So my friend invited me over to a sleepover one night, and as usual, I went over to his house. We got a lot of food, lots of drinks, we played video games all night, and we watched a bunch of movies. And then eventually we both fell asleep, and that was around midnight. Through the night, he would wake up and eventually stir me out of my sleep and force me to go to bed, or get him to the bathroom. And so I got up, went to the bathroom, went back to bed, and the morning had come. I woke up and I smelled the bacon, and I scrambled over to my friend to wake him up, and we both raced down the stairs and went into the kitchen, and I had made it first. His parents were waiting there, and they greeted me by saying good morning, and they had a somewhat concerning face, and I just thought nothing of it until I turned around, and my friend was also looking at me in sort of a weird way, and they continued to ask me if I remembered anything from the night before, and I told them that all I had done was wake up and use the restroom and go back to bed, and I asked what's wrong. And they had told me I sleptwalk, and I know I don't do good things when I sleepwalk. So instead of waking up and going to the bathroom, I woke up and went to the parents' bedroom. So I woke up, went to the parents' bedroom, and told his parents to scoot over. So his mom, not knowing it's me, she thinks I'm her son, scooted over and allowed me into the bed. And so eventually his mom figured out I'm not her son because I'm a bit too skinny. So she went to go get her actual son out of his bedroom to come and get me. And when he came into his parents' bedroom, I was under the sheets right in between both of his parents. Now I know not to sleep with my friend's parents. Yeah, so he got me out of the bed. He sort of struggled a bit because I didn't know what I was doing, and took me back to his bedroom and forced me to go to bed. And now y'all may be thinking, wow, he was super young when he did this. No, this was only a couple months ago. And now his parents won't look at me in the same way.
You probably need to go out to dinner with Jackson and hear the rest of his stories too, because they're all like that. Our next storyteller is Annabelle, who can't wait to come up here and tell you her story. She was another one who wasn't sure what she was going to tell tonight, and just recently, but she picked a good one. Welcome, Annabelle.
Thank you. Okay. So I've been asking my mom to get my double piercing for a while, and she told me, no, you have to wait till you're 16. But being the 15-year-old daughter I was, I decided not to listen and do it myself. So I told my friend, hey, do you want to pierce my ear one weekend? She's like, oh, sure, yeah. So we're at her house, and we're getting all the supplies. We have ice cubes, an old stud earring, and we couldn't find any needles, so we just used an old crooked safety pin. So we're getting ready. I have like 5 ice cubes on my ear because I'm kind of regretting this decision. And I have a flip-flop behind my ear so she'll know when she went through my ear. And I marked the little spot, and she's like, okay, I'm ready. So she puts the pin up to the spot, and she's counting down. And I'm laughing hysterically. I'm like, no, wait, don't do it yet. She's like, come on. And then finally she's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. So she's counting down, and I burst into laughter, and she's piercing through my ear. And it didn't hurt that badly until I realized I had to take that out and put the actual earring in. But the final product, it looked horrible, and it was not in the correctly marked spot, and it got infected like immediately after. And the next morning, my mom was like, I'm on my way to pick you up. I was like, oh shoot. So I kept tucking my hair over my ear, trying to hide it. But somehow she found it and made me take it out. But deep down, I was relieved because the pain was finally gone. And I should probably listen to her because a year later, I actually got my double piercings. Thank you.
Good job, Annabelle. So you may notice in your program that you've got a QR code. All of the students made a little commercial for tonight's event. And the next student probably has the most memorable commercial because none of us can get it out of our heads. So when you click QR code later, you'll see what we mean. Jackson, come on up and tell your story.
So over the summer, I was a stage manager for Shrek the Musical at a church. The director wanted one of the characters to come in a hot pink children's car, so it was my job to spray paint it that day. That was all I needed to do that day. I get the car outside to the back lot, and I'm ready to spray paint it. I leave the back door open so that I can get in and out. And as I'm doing so, I'm greeted by this old woman who seemed to work at the church. We'll call her Karen. She told me that the door needed to be closed at all times. Now, to get in through this door, not only did you need a fob, but also a fingerprint. And I didn't even go to this church, so there was no way I had either. And the only person in our group that did have both was Ashley, the executive producer. And she was busy at the moment, so she couldn't do it at all. And she told me to just leave the door open. Also, I needed something to lay the car on so that I didn't get spray paint on the pavement. She told me to go to the Sunday school room and grab some parchment paper. I go up there and grab the black parchment paper because it seemed to be the least used. As I'm doing so, I'm greeted by Karen again, telling me that that's a lot of paper I'm taking and it's very expensive. I tell her I'm sorry and it'll be put to good use. I get the parchment paper down and I'm ready to spray paint. I'm greeted by her again, telling me again that it's a lot of paper and it's very expensive. I tell her the same thing, that I'm sorry and all that. And then she asks me who told me to get it. I tell her Ashley, and she responds she'll have to talk with Ashley about that. I get the car done and tell Ashley everything. Apparently, Karen used to work in that department of the church and got transferred, so it wasn't even her problem to deal with. And Ashley said that Karen's not going to talk to her if she knows what's best for her. Turns out Ashley was right about that. If there's anything I learned from this church, it's that it has a lot of drama. Thank you.
So if you've noticed a pattern to tonight's stories, one of the things that we worked on in the class was story structure. When we first started out, a lot of the stories were a little bit nebulous. They didn't have a lot of flow. There wasn't a lot of stakes. And over time, they started working on the idea that there is a central character. In this case, it's a personal narrative, so it's themselves. And that the main character always has something that they want. but they can't get it. And we call that their big butt. And so after they have this conflict resolved and everything ends up good, there's a little lesson at the end. So you'll see the structure through a lot of these stories because they have really learned to develop this very satisfying story arc. We've come a long way in just 6 weeks. I'm super proud of them. Our final storyteller of the night is Reed. Let's give him a hand.
So it was the last day of freshman year, and I had a few friends and we were going to a bar because we had nothing better to do and we were waiting for another place to open. It was a place called the Ship and Anchor. It was next to school, and it was great. I had been there a few times, and I brought my skateboard because I was hoping to have a chance to ride it. I hadn't in a while. We went into the bar, pub, bar, whatever, and it kind of slipped around for a bit because none of us, except for me, had ever been there. And everyone looked around, and then we finally sat down, ordered food, chose what songs we were going to listen to, played pool, played with darts, all that good stuff. And finally, we had finished all our food, parents appeared, and started taking their kids, and it was just me and 3 other people. And so we walked by, and we kind of got a bit bored because while we were doing was staring at each other, we kind of ran out of things to talk about. So one of us grabbed the skateboard and went outside, and so we all followed him. And then we walked for a little bit until we ran into a slight incline, just a little bit, just enough for people who didn't know how to skateboard, which was everyone but me, which was iffy because we were right next to cars. It was very dangerous. And so we went down one by one until we kind of ran out. And this guy walks out from a veterinary clinic, which was right there. We were right in front of it. And he walks out, kind of looks around, and then goes right back inside. And then he walks out again, looks around, goes back inside, waits a few minutes, and then walks out finally fully. And we look at him, and we're just like, okay, this guy probably has some issue where we don't know what's going on. And he just looks at us and says, if you don't leave right now, I'm gonna call the police. Which was insane because there was no loitering sign. We had done nothing wrong. We were 4 high schoolers wearing uniforms, exactly like this, I'm not wearing a uniform. Sorry. And with one skateboard. There was no danger, there was no issue. And so we just kind of wandered around and just looked around and looked at him for a bit and realized, oh wait, he's actually serious. He's gonna call the police. And so I just say, okay, fine, bye. And we all walk back to the pub and no one knows what's going on and why he's like this. And so we walk inside and we all sit down and we're laughing hysterically about this because it made no sense. It was ludicrous. There's no reason he should actually have that issue. And then I realized recently, this was a long while back, and so recently I realized people have to deal with this every day, just everything. And it's insane to me because there's nothing that anyone has done wrong in this situation. It's just random acts of bias and aggression. And it made no sense. I guess this guy had an issue with skateboards when he was a little kid. I'm not sure. But my point is, it was just a slight taste of what people go through every day, and it really meant a lot to me to understand what people have to deal with on a regular basis. Thank you.
So I would like to point out he was wearing the uniform every time he practiced that. So our storytellers did a great job tonight. I can literally see the relief on their faces that this is done and that they knocked it out of the park. The storytellers will be available for autographs afterwards, but I want to thank you all for coming out. Let's give them all a big hand.